This network's early morning schedule is changing, and as part of the changes, the UK theme tune, which welcomes listeners to Radio 4 at 5:30, is being killed off. The piece was composed by Fritz Spiegl. His widow, Ingrid Spiegl, told us how it all came about.
The original brief was to write a tune or to arrange some tunes for Radio 4 UK, and so he used folk tunes from all four countries of the UK and combined them and interwove them into this morning piece, which lasts about 5-6 minutes. I think it's been very successful. It's lasted nearly 30 years, I think, or more. And why aren't they using it anymore? Well, as the controller wants to put his mark on the station. I think he wants more rolling news and not to have what he considers a tired piece. Obviously I'll miss it. It's one of my connections with Fritz, who died 3 years ago. He conducts the piece. I love the piece. I love hearing it. I don't hear it every day, not even every week, but when I do hear it, I think it's a great piece. I don't think it's too patriotic. I don't think there's anything wrong with patriotism, and I think, our maybe future Prime Minister, Mr. Gordon Brown, wants us all to be patriotic. It's not just jingoistic tunes. In fact, it was Rupert I knew jingoistic, probably. But the rest of the tunes are old folk tunes from each country, and there's nothing to do with jingoism in them. There's Early One Morning, Danny Boy, Green Sleeves. There's nothing jingoistic about them.
Well, Mark Damazer, Radio 4's controller, is here. Do you like it as a piece of music, or do you think it's tired, as Ingrid Spiegl suggested?
Well, I think it has a certain kind of poetic feeling and pastoral feeling, and in many ways it's very lovely. And I think it's very touching that Fritz Spiegl, who himself was a refugee, he wasn't born in Britain, composed it partly as a tribute to the United Kingdom. But I honestly don't think that on balance it's the best way of serving the audience at 5:30 in the morning. And as Fritz's widow said, it's quite a long piece, it's 5 to 6 minutes, and I think the time would come for change.
We'll talk about the changes in more detail in a moment or two, but just let me put to you something said in an email by John Hanford, one of your listeners, who says, "Don't dare get rid of that beautiful Radio 4 theme. With its interleaving national tunes, it's one of the most uplifting and clever compositions I've ever heard. Perfect for waking up to. If you want to get rid of something, how about the tinkering controller for thinking of such an outrageous idea?"
Oh dear. I don't suppose we're easily going to agree there, and I'm sorry to have upset him, and I don't think he'll be alone. I know that there are people who wake up and like to be eased into the day by listening to Fritz's medley, and as I say, in its time it clearly has served its purpose. It's been there for 33 years, more than 30, and it has elements of loveliness to it. But you can't run Radio 4 if you just try and please everybody the whole time, and I have thought for some time that between 5:30, between 5:30 and 6 o'clock, we weren't quite putting in, early in that period, enough of a briefing of the day ahead.
All right.
And you have to remember, Ed, that not everybody listens to the Today programme all the way through for the 3 hours. So having something before it, I thought made sense.
Just take us through what is going to be in its place.
Well, I mean, some of the elements are already there, but they're there very much in brief, and I just intend to make them a little bit longer. So there'll be a newspaper review, there'll be a quick sports bulletin, we'll do a bit of business. And we'll put in something that we haven't had before, which is a look ahead to the day coming. And that won't just be the political stories, but I hope will include some other things that are happening around the United Kingdom and will make the news later in the day. So if you take today as an example, it looks like the Whitbread Book of the Year will be announced tonight, and that's the kind of thing that we put into the news briefing between 5:30 and 5:45.
But you've got this programme, as you alluded to a moment or two ago, starting at 6 o'clock. Is there really an appetite for another dollop of newsy stuff half an hour beforehand?
Well, magnificent programme though this is...
It's all right, you don't have to say that.
I can reassure everybody that it's not on any possible list for discarding or axing, so you're safe. But magnificent though it is, there are people who get up a bit earlier than the Today programme, and not all of them hear most of the Today programme, or even more than a bit of the Today programme, and some of them don't even hear the Today programme at all. And arming them with a quick news briefing, not, I should add, with padding rolling news, or heaven forfend, more trails for Radio 4, which I know will upset another section of the audience, but giving them a sense of the day ahead, seems to me to be a perfectly reasonable and sensible use of Radio 4's time at that period in the morning.
Mark Damazer, many thanks.
Some heavyweight political support's building up for the Radio 4 UK theme. The Chancellor Gordon Brown, who we're told routinely starts his day at 5 a.m, has told the Daily Mail that he has always seen the UK theme as one of the symbols of Britishness and a celebration of British culture. And in his column in The Sun this morning, the former Cabinet Minister David Blunkett calls on the BBC to keep its hands off the theme. Let's stop this change, he says. Insomniacs of the world unite. Well, the issue was even brought up during Prime Minister's questions yesterday in Parliament.
James Clarkson.
Whether or not we are to have a Great Britain Day, will the Prime Minister at least do what he can do to help keep the UK theme on early British morning radio, so that we can promote a UK theme, especially on Burns night?
I have to say to the Honourable Gentleman, I mean, obviously my influence with the BBC is legendary, but I know they will be aware of the very strong feeling that is expressed by him and by many others, I'm sure, in the House and across the country.
Well, Jocelyn Hay is chairman and founder of the Voice of the Listener and Viewer. I spoke to her a little earlier, asked her what did she make of the high-level backing for the campaign to save the UK theme.
I do wish that the people who are now getting so exercised about the future of these 2 or 3 minutes would actually put the same energy into thinking about the future of the whole of the BBC. Because this year, the BBC's Royal Charter expires, and in 1 month's time, we're expecting a government white paper setting out its whole future policy for the BBC. Now, that'll include the future of the BBC's charter, the future of its remit, and its funding. And the whole funding of BBC Radio, including Radio 4, depends on the licence fee. So, at the moment, what is under threat is actually the future of Radio 4, not just these few minutes of this musical interlude that those of us who are awake at 5:30 in the morning actually happen to hear.
But it's clearly getting people going, isn't it? Gordon Brown, David Blunkett, others. We've had early day motions from MPs urging the BBC to reconsider. Thousands of signatures claim to be on a website, Save the Radio 4 theme. What do you say to those people?
I say to them, wake up and think about the future of the BBC and the future of Radio 4 itself, because this year the whole future of the BBC is under review, and we could find that the licence fee is ultimately abolished, and who is going to fund BBC Radio, Radio 4, without the licence fee? It could easily go with digital radio over to subscription. What would these people think then?
Well, what about the MPs who are accusing the BBC of political correctness, saying that it's detrimental to patriotism, this
I think
decision
that's a
to axe
silly
the UK
argument.
theme?
It's nothing to do with that. It's a lovely piece of the idiosyncrasy of Radio 4, and it is, if you like, part of our heritage. It's symptomatic of it. When I'm awake at that time, it's a lovely interlude between the measured tones of the World Service and the more thrusting tone of Radio 4 and the Today programme.
Well, as you say, there are other very big issues ahead for Radio 4. What about those people who say to Mark Damazer, the controller, well, actually, why don't you concentrate on those rather than tinkering with things like the UK theme?
I think people have to realise that things have to change. Radio 4 itself has to change. And any time there is any even minor change in Radio 4, there's an outcry, because we all love it the way it is. And many of us actually structure our lives and our days around it. And programs like this piece of music act as punctuation marks, and we look for them, and therefore it throws out the rhythm of our day. And it annoys and irritates me as much as anybody else. But I come back to saying I do wish that people would consider the scale of this issue in relation to the scale of the issue of the whole future of the BBC, the future of BBC Radio, and of Radio 4 itself.
That was Jocelyn Hay of The Voice of the Listener and Viewer. 12 minutes to 9.